ask the question, how can we fix Trinidad and Tobago? And I think it takes one step at a time, one person at a time, one policy at a time. This morning, I welcome Mr. Rondall Feeles, the president of the Fathers Association of Trinidad and Tobago, to chat a little bit about the challenges and inequities that are faced among men in Trinidad and Tobago and how we can do our part to help fix it. Good morning, sir.
Morning, Rocker. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Welcome back. I feel like you might have a corner office in here at some point.
Yeah, I feel so too.
All right, so I understand that you were supposed to have, was it a meeting? Or was
A joint select committee hearing.
A joint select committee hearing with the Parliament, but Parliament has been dissolved.
Correct.
It was supposed to happen on March 28th?
It was supposed to be on the 14th and then it was postponed to the 28th.
All right, and now, well, Parliament is dissolved, so it can't happen again. Where does that leave you?
Correct. I mean, it leaves me here. But that was an important hearing. I mean, I can't say it was purposely done, so to speak. The elections has been called. It has always been our plan to reach out to every party, but now as it's been called before our hearing, which was actually a review of our sitting from 2018. So it means they were going to review the recommendations that was made by the Joint Select Committee since 2018 to see if the ministries and the authorities they instructed and recommended to do certain things actually did it.
Right.
It is now of tantamount importance that we from the Fathers Association get that information out there to the political parties, to the intended or the political leaders who intend to become governor of our Twin Isle of Trinidad and Tobago. So as I said, it's brought us out there to have these media campaigns to ensure that some of these things, these recommendations that was made by the Joint Select Committee, I mean, make up some of the manifestos. I haven't seen any as yet. I'm hoping to see some, but I'm really hopeful that we could put some of this information out.
Tell me, what were some of the recommendations made by the Joint Select Committee?
Most definitely for substantial paternity leave. That was one of the things that was top of the table. You know, right now we have policy-driven paternity leave, which is 2 to 3 days. You were part of the International Men's Day seminar that we had as well, and you would see corporate companies like Flow that increased it to as much as 2 months and said how beneficial it was to the men in their company. We also spoke. They also spoke to mandatory paternity testing before you draft up or before you order maintenance orders.
Okay.
Because we've seen so many men become imprisoned, and then when you do the DNA test, was never their children in the first place. We spoke to things like parental alienation, parental abduction, things that we've highlighted that actually puts children at risk by alienating them from another parent, from one of the parents who provides that protective arm. That's something that we raised with them in 2018. We raised the issue of Mr. Selvon Reyes and his children being brutally murdered because he wasn't a part of their lives, and he said he was unable to be there to protect them. I was here again when little Amaya's dad said the same thing to me. So I mean, from 2018 to now, had some of these things been adhered to, we may have saved some lives. Look at the 11 babies that died. Had the paternity leave been adhered to the recommendations for those things, those fathers may have had meaningful time to be able to bury their young babies, to be able to be there for their wives, to support them, to be able to get time to grieve for themselves. So we had to realize the things we've lost out on because some of these recommendations were not taken up by the relevant ministries as well.
So is it just a matter of the ministry saying we will take up this, or is it that the policy needs to change before the ministries can implement them?
I mean, the ministry could pick up anything. I mean, it's a recommendation from members of...
From what I understand, is that a cabinet note to go with it?
Well, you had to have some concern. You had to take up that JSC recommendation in the first place. We didn't even get a meeting since then. And that is why we were looking forward to this review. And I mean, I was very grateful to see that Parliament cared enough to say, let's really see if anything has been done from 2018 to now. This isn't for Rondall Feeles and the Single Fathers Association. This is for a member of your society. These are for men in your society. And as you realize, we want to raise other topics as well. We want to raise topics that involve the issues of males generally, because that has been catapulted in our space to discuss, because other groups aren't really advocating for it. We're looking at homelessness. The Ministry of Social Development themselves put out the statistic on homelessness, where men are 94% the victims of homelessness. Suicide is another thing again. Men are 84% the victims of suicide. I've said these statistics over and over again, and these statistics aren't statistics that have been presented by me. It's been presented by the TTP as the suicide statistics, and the statistics for homelessness has been presented by the Ministry of Social Development.
What do you think attributes to some of these statistics?
I mean, neglect. That is the main thing. If you neglect a member of society, that is the only thing that will indicate this slumber in everything. We've seen young boys dropping out of school. We've seen more of them becoming involved in violent crime. We've seen these things. So it means that we've neglected a member of our society, a meaningful member of our society. So I think we must, in this election time, men and women together, stand in solidarity and call on those who want to govern us to make male issues a priority. You know how many young women, or not even young women, how many women who didn't like me 10 or 15 years ago are now suffering because their sons who are men today are suffering from parental alienation, and they have no access or relationship with their grandchildren. They now understand what I was saying since then. Some of them who's raised children as their grandchildren, to only find out that when a paternity test was done, that is not their biological grandchildren. Many of them return to me today and say, hey, you have our support, Mr. Feeles. And these are things that was raised at that joint select committee hearing, and these are things that we want any ruling party that decides to take governance of our country to prioritize. Males are human beings. Look how much men in here. There's only man in here.
Nah, that's so.
One lady in the back. Excuse me.
Two in the back.
They hide it. I talk about in the room. I talk about in the room.
All right.
But I mean, men are important too. Males are important. Women make boys who become men. And that's the reality of it. We all have mothers.
In terms of some of the things, I mean, you sound like you want to get up on the political platform yourself at this point.
Nah, boy. Nah, I mean, I've been asked that. But it's just not my thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not my thing. At the end of the day,
in your advocacy so far, have you seen any changes in some of the things that you were talking about 15 years ago to now? Have you seen anything change at all?
I mean, yes, we've seen social perception change. I mean, it's either it changed for the good or sometimes it changed for some people saying negative. But I've seen social perception change. So, you know, it was popular just to hear about deadbeat, but you hear a lot about single father now. So I think people realize now there is a percentage of fathers that are concerned and consider the lives of their children and want to be involved in the children's life. And that to me, I think is hallmark. Because growing up as a young boy, the only narrative we heard was about the deadbeat father. So to be a part of a move that has said to a nation and a region and to the world, because we were called from the Fathers Association all the way to the United States in Congress. And for the world to realize that, hey, there are fathers that are concerned and fathers that want to be involved and will fight to be involved if they have to be involved. I think that to us is our biggest win.
All right, so changing social perception and people's perception is definitely a win.
Right.
And the next change that we need to see now is the policy change
Correct.
that can be implemented, and not just in public sector, we're talking private and public, yeah?
Correct. We need to see the policy, and not only policy change, we need to see legislative change. Because there's the policy of the 2 to 3 days for paternity leave,
right,
when it should be legislative for about 2 months. And that's the reality of it. And we need to also look at the equity in the entire thing. Men make national insurance contributions as well. So if they're making the same national insurance contributions as well, economically, because that is the excuse they always use, why aren't they afforded the same amount of time to be able to be there with their wife and child just after the child is born? That's the most important part, one of the most important stages for bonding. Why do we leave men out of these parts for bonding and then say we only have a set of deadbeat men, deadbeat fathers all over the place? We should find ways to encourage them in the prenatal stage and the postnatal stage, and paternity leave is critical and important.
So aside from the paternity leave, which definitely I agree with you, very critical, very important. I actually used my own vacation days when my daughter was born to take the time off to make sure that I could be there in that very important stage. So I completely understand where you're coming from. Right. One of the things that you mentioned as well is the construction of male sanctuaries or support centers for minor males. Correct. Tell me about that request. that desire, and why is it so important?
Correct. I mean, I just stated the statistic that was issued by the Ministry of Social Development. Men are 94% the victim of homelessness in Trinidad and Tobago, yet there's no shelters for men. What you will find is a lot of drug rehabilitation spaces. But when it comes to shelters, and I don't even like the word shelter, you have to understand the nuances when it comes to maleness. So even when you're being you have to be strategic even with what you coin this space. Call it a sanctuary, call it a place that, I mean, that will help you develop. And I think being the biggest victim of homelessness and not having a space is a slap in the face. So it's this bad that even in cases where mothers have to leave the home because of fear of violence, and they leave with their sons that are over the age of 11, they're not allowed to enter into the female shelters. So we have numbers of calls coming to us asking us if there are spaces for minors between the age of 11 to 17 that are male.
And there's nowhere.
And there's nowhere. So it's, I don't even want to say hypocritical.
It's heartbreaking is what it is.
It's heartbreaking.
That's what it is to me.
You understand?
Tell me so far, we don't have any time left, unfortunately, but tell me so far, in terms of you reaching out to the different political parties, what responses have you gotten?
I've gotten the response of the sitting Prime Minister only thus far.
That's a good place to start.
Well, I mean, we're very glad, and he's agreed to meet with us, most definitely. I also got a response as well from Ms. Makila Pandey as well. So we'll arrange to meet with her. I'm pretty sure I will have a response from Mrs. Bicester as well. So I think we will meet with all the political parties and we will raise the plights of our men in the society. It's not about saying that we have to stop viewing, highlighting issues of men means it working against women.
Yeah.
Better men means a better life for women. And that is what we have to understand in this society.
Rondall Feeles, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and I wish you all the best on your continued journey. And of course, any way that we can support, we definitely will continue to do so.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Rondall Feeles, the president of the Fathers Association of Trinidad and Tobago, just sharing with us some of the wishes, desires, the journey so far, and how we press forward into the future. We take a quick break and come back.